Welcome to the Golf Fitness Bomb Squad. I'm your host, Chris Finn, and today I am very excited to have back with us one of the top teachers in the country, Brian Manzella. He shouldn't need no further intro, otherwise you've been living under a rock. But Brian, what's up? Excited to have you back on, man.
Believe it or not, there are a few people who live under rocks. So great to be on, Chris. It's always fun to talk golf with you.
Yeah, no, I think it's fun. We actually had your colleague Michael Jacobs on a couple other episodes ago, and I was excited when I saw you coming back on because when we got to talking Jacobs 3D and just the nerdy side of stuff. I saw you coming back on. I was like, sweet, another incredibly intelligent instructor that we can dive into the weeds with a little bit. But before we do that, I know you're on tour. You're working with guys on tour. You're on the road. It is, in my opinion, probably one of the most interesting areas of professional golf, of like the instructional side of things. I think it's wild to me that there's more coverage of like caddies and changing of caddies than there is of how the coaching world works.
I'm not currently like on the PGA tour, except I have at least 3 teaching students who have people on. I feel like I'm still on the PGA tour.
Yeah, you're in the realm. You know what goes on there. Yeah,
I'm getting the, I'm getting the. I told a little cute. I told a little cute story. There's a friend that was teaching a new player the week of the players, and that I was getting the swings, for second opinions, and he was liking my ideas, so he would be sending them to me. Yeah. And then I would see the next day's swings. Well, they looked better. They looked like somebody was listening to what I had to say. And then later in the week, the guy played decent. And then later in the week, his actual teacher of record, who was out at the tournament with him, not my friend. My friend was the mistress. I was the mistress assistant. Was bragging about how good his swing was. I went, hey, wait a minute, bro. How about a little help for the Italian boy here?
Exactly.
But it is a super interesting part of the business because, right? The players are in no position to know anything about you or me or the next available decent teacher for a good player in whatever direction I'm pointing right now, which is towards South Carolina from here. So I'm sure there's somebody not that far that way. We probably get to Georgia and find a good teacher, Alabama. So probably just slightly this way, you get Mark Blackburn. Yeah. So how would they know, though, if somebody who wasn't currently on tour teaching, but was on tour at some point or never was on tour at some point, would be any good at help, would be a good candidate for them to seek their advice? And the answer to that is there is none. Unless they spend way too much time on social media or going to teaching summits. I just did Bernie Najar Caves Valley Summit on Tuesday. Unless they do that kind of thing, like where to look to get people on that you can have on the podcast. Yeah. They don't know, so they make some very bad decisions sometimes, and the bad decisions are not necessarily because the person can't teach. It's a bad match, right? Like the famous Chuck Cook, Hall of Fame teacher, Luke Donald, maybe he's not going to be a Hall of Fame player, but he was on his way, and it was just a bad, a thrower and a drag teacher. Yeah. It didn't work out very good. So it is super interesting, but the reason that you hear more about the caddy switches than the player coach switches or relationships is because for whatever reason, and I can give you some theories, the golf instruction industry is not covered worth a darn. To the whole golf instruction industry.
Yeah, well, certainly not. Nobody knows anyone's fitness coach or physio or
They should. So if you're on TV talking about it, you should have a sheet of everybody who's got status and everybody that they think is on their team. Yeah. And then if you had sources, like if you were a cop, right, and you had a beat cop, and you would have sources with caddies and people talk on tour because it's a little small group of people compared to the real world. Yeah. And they would all say, and by the way, Chris Finn is actually working with Joe Pascopoulos this week. Yeah. And you don't see Joe because he's sitting in the stands right there and they're talking over the earpods. Yeah. So it would be a little bit better because some people get their name mentioned on the telecast and it's not across the board. It's really not fair to the other folks.
Yeah. And what do you think the lack of infatuation with the underworkings of all the behind the scenes, right? So the coaches, both on the instructional side, the medical side, the fitness side. Why do you? What are your theories of why?
I hate to say the same thing in 2 straight podcasts because I did another one a little while ago. But there's 2 things that overridingly run this industry without anybody really knowing about it. One, everybody's just trying to keep their job. Mm-hmm. And nobody wants the phone calls. Yeah. So if you write an article that promotes somebody that is somewhat not liked by some other group of people, right? You can think about it. Think of a method out there, just like if we were playing a mental game where you say, think of a number from 1 to 10. Yeah. Think of a swing method, right? Got one in your mind? Tell me when you're ready.
I got at least
swing
one.
method.
Yeah, we're good.
Okay, got one. Yeah. Okay. So then you know that there are people, you might not know who the people are, but you would know what they like because they're a method teacher, and you would know what they really don't like. So if the really don't like people get a little bone thrown their way, then these guys call you on the phone and say, what the hell you had this guy on the podcast talking about me? Now, in the real world, like, ESPN and Fox and all real sports shows, then there's too much money involved. There's too many people. All of a sudden, you can charge Pepsi twice as much if a show hits and turns into a success. Mm-hmm. But in this little Mickey Mouse business, everybody's just scraping away crumbs, and they're just too scared to cover it. And it's just a shame because it's sitting right there. And the best example is Ryan French, the Monday info guy who just a guy that knew about that stuff, played in 4 spotters, caddied in 4 spotters, thought there was no coverage about it. And that guy decides he's going to start a social media account covering it. He's got 183,000 followers, and the network put him on a ladies tournament last week to talk about the people that you might not know, who are a lot. Well, there's a lot of people I don't know playing ladies golf. It shouldn't be that way, but you could say that about men's golf too. So hopefully this new era that we're in where social media is getting bigger and bigger, there'll be more golf media entities like Barstool Sports, right? Yeah. I know they try to do something with golf, but they ain't covering anything either. But Dave Portnoy at some point was worth the same amount of money as me, and now he can buy this whole street and the golf course I work at. So it can be done, and it might be you, Chris. Hey, why not?
I don't know about that. I don't know about that, Brian. But for everyone, for the average golfer listening, you mentioned method, like different methods. What's the difference in a method teacher and somebody who maybe just kind of educate the listener of what a method teacher is versus, obviously kind of, tailoring.
A non-method teacher. Yeah. So basically, and here's the first thing you need to know about that. Method teachers do not like to be called method teachers, right? Just like high maintenance women do not like to be called high maintenance women.
And guys, I just like nice things, Brian.
And guys who are bums don't like to be called bums. Right? Yep. Okay. And there's a lot more guy bums. Yeah. So, no matter who would come for the lesson, no matter if it's Charles Barkley or Tiger Woods, Hank Haney was a method teacher. Is Hank about a Hall of Fame teacher? Yes. So you can be a Hall of Fame teacher and be a method teacher. He teaches a certain grip angle, left hand grip angle. He teaches a certain takeaway, certain top of the backswing, and he's been unbelievably successful. There's another person who could buy the golf course I work at in this street. So I'm just using him as a soft method, right? Because people don't really think of him as a method teacher, but certainly is. Butch has pretty much got 2 patterns he teaches to most people, and you're either one or the other, I guess, depending on whether you're a hooker or a slicer. You're trying to be a hooker or a slicer. But everybody thinks, oh, he doesn't have a method, which is baloney. And so I'm a multi-pattern teacher, but I feel like I have like 8 base patterns. I've done videos on them, and then I customize from there. But a real method teacher would say, okay, you're going to grip it strong. Both hands turn 45. You're going to aim 45 degrees to the right, and you're going to come over that and try to hit a pull fade. And everybody I teach is going to get that lesson, whether it's Kenny Perry, who swung 6 degrees inside out, Zach Johnson, who swung 5 degrees inside out, or Dustin Johnson, who swings left like this guy I'm half inventing, but aims left. Right, so they're going to teach everybody the same stuff. And the one good thing about a method teacher is if you teach somebody the same stuff all the time, when it breaks, you know all the tricks to fix it. But a method, if I just came up with one right now and tried to be as vanilla about it as possible, might fit 5% or 3% of all the golfers.
Sure. And I'm sure this is stuff that you've seen through all the technology, the research, everything that you've done. I mean, this has come from all that work that you've done, I'm assuming, right? Of the understanding of, or how have you kind of evolved?
So my base, the center pattern is directly from my work with Michael Jacobs and Stephen Nesbitt and the research, because you start seeing, in a perfect world, here's what you would do. You would not get the club outside your arms. Pretty much it would stay between your arms. It could be hard up against the left one, some of the time. You wouldn't do crazy things like have the club face way down here or way up there or wide open. There's a certain flow to the club face opening and closing, because all people need to understand that are watching, all club faces at the top are open. That's how open they are, all right? Bobby Jones's club looked like this. Johnny Miller's club looked like this. Dustin Johnson and Lee Trevino's look like that. They're all open. It's just the Miller and Bobby Jones club face is more open. So there's a certain club face that seems to have caused less grief as we looked at graphs and stuff. And then you really don't want to have to shove your hands forward, because if you do, then you're going to have to twist on the club like crazy so that the club has loft when you hit it.
Right.
Because otherwise you're going to take all the loft off of it. And then there are body things that you would probably do that are closer to how the human anatomy functions. And that my center pattern, I call pattern 13, that pattern pretty much came out of the research, right? The club's coming in on your backswing, you're slowing it down and you're sending it another way. So that's on every swing, right? Unless they're this short. So every swing that gets even toward parallel or past, right? Jake Knapp, right, who I've spent some time with, and I was out at the tournament with him and my really dear friend John Ortega, who's been his teacher since he's 8 years old. That club's going way back there. So that track that club head's taken at the end of the backswing toward him, he has to slow that down and redirect it. So I kind of had an inkling, but now I could test it and go, oh, that's why. If you've been doing this long enough, like you and I have, you start being able to go. You like have Ghost of Christmas Past come up in your head, right?
Pattern
recognition. But
exactly.
But the outside of my little system is, at some point, it's too far inside out.
Yeah.
Right, and it's unusable. 8 degrees inside out is not going to work. 6 can work. I'd rather see 4.5 or less. Yeah. And on this side, on the outside in, the outside inside, you probably can fade it around 4.5 and be a decent golfer, maybe even 5. But I like to see 3 or less. So the ball just kind of doesn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
And in modern golf, it's got to go somewhere. Now, ball change is going to change that. So, and then I customize. So I have these like, kind of base patterns in my head, and I customize. But a method teacher would basically have more of one pattern they can adjust, and then they'll have drills that they teach everybody and how they want the club to be, come from an angle to no angle, and what they want the club to look like through the ball. And there are people who are method teachers or have been taught to be method teachers who don't teach the method. There's sort of a method with golf tech, and I don't think they hold a little paper football aimed at their head, so that if you accidentally don't teach that to the next person that walks through the door, that they're going to flick you and you're going to have a little paper football dent in your temple. No. I think they let them kind of alone. But if you want the method, if you go to see George Genkus, and if you look at the pictures he posts up, it seems like he likes laid off, laid down, squatted, and rotated without a whole bunch of hip slide and up the left arm. That's what they seem to be posing, and they post up on social media. I'm sure he makes exceptions, but I would call him a method teacher.
Right.
And that's a completely different method than probably the one you had in your head. I don't have telepathy, but I just have an idea. So it doesn't make it a bad choice for somebody if they know what they're buying, and it just so happens that style would work for you. But the odds are against it, right?
But, yeah, I mean, we see that on the physical side, how different every single golfer is. And so the odds of that one method matching the exact physical requirements are very, very low.
Look at I got 7 anchors in this shoulder. That's
going to require
not going.
Different method.
It's not going. Yeah, exactly. But for the folks listening, what I would suggest you do is, everybody you're probably going to go to has a social media page. Just ask questions. Now, people will answer them, even if it's their little assistance. I answer directly. I'm sure you do when people have a fitness question. Yeah. But the one thing I would say is that the best thing I ever heard about fitness was, I was at a please stop me if I said this the last time I was on the show, but I was at a seminar. It was actually the first one I ever talked at out of New Orleans, long ago, hundreds ago. And they had the Pittsburgh Steelers trainer there. And I asked him about this kid that was coming out of LSU, Early Doucette, who I had seen a picture of, like with no shirt on. He looked more like a cyborg than a human. He was chiseled in a way that no textbook could have done any justice. And I said, when he gets there, are you going to test him to see if he has limited mobility or whatever? Or what are you going to do? Yeah. Right? And they said, we're going to make him stronger, more flexible. That was it. There wasn't going to be any he has limited. No, he's just overall going to. So I would say, and I think, Chris, you would agree, that at the end of the day, if you really work on your body, you're going toward anatomical function, the way the creator designed a human, and that with limitations, obviously, to injuries and stuff like that. And in the golf swing, you should be shooting for something that looks like all the books I have on the shelf right here. All these people are in the Hall of Fame. If somebody's teaching you something drastically different in the golf swing than, let's say, I don't know, Jack Nicklaus did, there better be a pretty good reason, or Tiger Woods in 2000. There better be a good reason. If somebody's teaching you to stand on your head and do some strange band exercise because it's going to make you better, because when you're upside down, your gravity is different. You might want to check with Chris.
If you can swing a club upside down, you can swing it on your feet even easier, right?
100%.
Well, talk to me. So, we obviously, when we look at someone, they're, to your point of kind of having your center, right, where you kind of have that ideal, like, hey, this is kind of generally what we're looking for. We see the same thing physically, where there's general strength markers, there's general mobility markers. Now, if we have Kyle Berkshire in here, Colton Casto, who's swinging 160 miles an hour, the principles are the same, but the degree of stuff, of strength and mobility that those guys need versus my 92-year-old who was in here earlier, like, very different. Now, they both need basic mobility, basic strength, basic ability to rotate. So if you have somebody who, let's say, we check the boxes physically, and then they come to you, how do you navigate, which of the different variations? Because the likelihood that they're that exact, 13 is very low.
Next to zero.
Yeah, right.
So basically, what I'm looking for. Okay, I have a lesson this afternoon. A new person. Like everything else today is people I've been working with for a long time. So I watch the ball flight and the general thing swing. I've done this so long, just like you. We know right away.
Yeah.
The big problem is really obvious. Yeah. Right. So you mostly hit a fade. Now, if it 2 consecutive pull draws, and I say, so you normal shots a little fade, and they look at me like, have you been spying on me ahead of time? No, because it's a fade pattern. You got a weak grip, you got an open club face, you come over it a little bit, you got a fade finish. Yeah. So that stuff is easy, right? Okay, Brian, you've been going to Hot Works now. I've been 8 times. Okay, you don't look as fat as the fattest I've seen you or the skinniest I've seen you. So I would stay on that diet, and then overall we're going to start doing some weight training, because right now you're doing nothing. Mm-hmm. That's what you would do, because look at this bicep right here. It's pitiful, right? I couldn't curl this keyboard right here. All right, so that stuff is obvious. Where the customization comes is, okay, this person just needs a vanilla backswing. They've got this bad grip. The club face was looking at the ground. Now they got a better grip. The club face looks better. Club was super laid off, and their elbow was, now we got them in a kind of an orthodox top of the backswing position. And they're not, something is not quite right physically. It doesn't look like they can do a draw through the ball move. Mm-hmm. So Michael, who spent all this time with Tom Myers, he does all these elaborate screens that you would be very proud of him. No. I don't know any of it. So I'm just going to grab the club, and I'm going to grab the person, and I'm going to just ever so slightly try to move this arm of this boom mic here, and I'm going to go, no, it's not going, right? So if I tried to put somebody in a normal exit look, right, back on the plane, and they couldn't quite do it at all. Hurt that shoulder? Yeah, I fell off a car when I was 16. A bunch of kids, we were goofing around, and somebody started the truck, and I fell off, and I broke my shoulder, didn't get it fixed, and that's good information to have. So now I realize, there's nothing wrong with fading it. Mm-hmm. So, let's see if we can adjust that backswing. We'll take that club from, this Gene Littler or Lucas Oberg. Now people know what I'm talking about. And let's throw it over here a little bit more, make it easier to hit that little start to the left fade. Oh, that looks really good. Okay, so now the grip is better, and we figured out we're not going to draw them per se, and there's this limitation on this side of the ball, and then the pattern starts filling into the obvious ball flight that we're looking for, and then over time you're basically fielding questions just like the mechanics used to when everybody kept their car for 10 years. Yeah. It was like, so Mr. Smith, what's wrong? Well, it's rattling when I get to 40 miles an hour. Yeah. Okay, well, I'm going to get in the car. Okay, well, it's your fencer valve. We got to fix your fencer valve, put the ball bearings in the right place. So then you're just going on what works. Mm-hmm. So like my best student, I still claim David Toms. He'll call a couple times a year, but is a kid named Nicholas Tominski. He's a Polish kid. I've been teaching since he's 7.5 years old. He's 18. He's on the Alps tour. He's also going to get 6 starts on the Challenge Tour, which is their Corn Ferry. Mm-hmm. So he played last week in a Challenge tournament. He's playing this week coming in Denmark, so we gave him a lesson. So the first thing that people would notice if I put his swing up, which if people that were watching this and they go, run over to Brian Manzella's social media and go, where's all the student golf swings?
Yeah.
I don't do it. And the reason I don't do it is people would bother these people. And it's not,
Right.
they didn't pay me to use them
bothered,
as
yeah.
toys,
Yeah.
right? So I'll just put up a tour player that I don't, have some comment on, and I don't teach them, and it's fair game, right? Because they're in the public, sector. But they would say, well, he takes did they take it back really inside? Yeah, like compared to what? Like compared to what's in style in 2025. Yes. Okay. But Julius Burrows, who won at least one major that I know of and played good for 28 years on tour. Oh, it's almost exactly Julius Burrows' backswing. Okay. Well, that went out of style because now golf is different. That was just a bunch of plumbers. Yeah, think about that when you're talking about Julius Burrows. Should make some guy that saw him play have a heart attack. But no, I didn't teach Nick that. That evolved. That was the way we could get to the top of the backswing that worked. Yeah. That was it. We tried other stuff. So that's part of it too, right? Like you're trying to come up with something that works in the tournament. In the tournament, maybe your club championship. If you have this pretty swing and you can light up Trackman, and when you get under pressure, you just can't quite aim down the right side and play the draw because your brain sees fade and you're scared of the push slice that you had for 20 years. Yeah. We got to come up with something that works or you're going to fire me. Yeah. It's that easy. Yeah. Or you should fire me. Yeah. So that's how people develop swings that work. Yeah. Jim Furyk's little move was a drill. His dad, who was a golf pro and his only teacher, came up with for him to help his transition. And he got to the point where he did the drill so much that he hit the ball better doing the drill than doing the regular backswing. You don't think his dad said, "Oh, little Jimmy, come over here. Let's put the club on the wrong side of you." And by the way, I know the guy who Matt Wolf took lessons from before Genghis. He always swung that way. He was a baseball player. Yeah. Club was always on the opposite side of him. And God bless the guy that I know and Genghis for not screwing him up, because let me just tell you, they could have got him in a pretty backswing position and he'd be selling, TVs at Best Buy. So it's probably sometimes you have to be able to be flexible enough, even if it's something you don't particularly care for per se, that this may be the best thing for that person.
Well, I think you brought up such a important, and I want to highlight the point of what your swing looks like on Trackman doesn't matter. It's a matter of what you can perform with and what you can play. I mean, we have our member this week, right? And the number of guys on the range with the Trackmans, and they're looking beautiful, but you can go down the range and he's going to crumble. He always stinks. Like, they're hitting this one shot on the range and then they get out and play and it's never there. And I don't think that's talked about enough.
No, but the point is there's a set of Trackman numbers you play your best with.
Right. Yeah.
But people are trying for Trackman numbers that maybe don't suit them. Yeah, all Trackman's telling you is this is what the club did, this is what the ball did. Right. And the biggest benefit to Trackman and Trackman type devices is teachers don't do really stupid stuff anymore.
Yeah.
Because I would see people, and I knew that this was inside out beyond normal.
Yeah.
But I had nothing to go on except to show somebody, look, let me hit a big sweep and draw for you.
Yeah.
We'll put the camera right here. Now here's your swing. Do you see how your club's like super in compared to even that 30-yard draw I just hit with that 5-iron? Oh yeah, baby, you can convince them. Now they see a double-digit inside-out number, they know that's wrong.
Yeah.
So it keeps the teacher from doing goofy things. Yeah. Generally at tour events, what people do with Trackman, and a lot more with Foresight than Trackman. Trackman is much better for the golf club.
Yeah.
Foresight, they kind of just use it as like it's spinning the same that it was spinning yesterday. And, the ball is going how far, like compared to normal, right? That kind of stuff. Practice my distance wedges. You say, well, you can just have a target out there. You don't know the difference between 60 and 63.
Right.
On tour, 60 and 63 is a bad
Big
shot.
difference, yeah.
Right? If you have to try to hit it 63 and you hit it 60, it's probably spinning off the green. So that's how they're using it. So somebody in a member guest probably needs to hit less balls, hit a couple putts, and think positive thoughts. But because you're not gonna, if you got as Stamp Snead said 100 years ago, and probably people before him said, like old Tom Morris, you got to dance with the girl you brung.
Yeah,
you're
right.
not going to invent something that day on the driving range that works. And so those things, all of those things, force plates and fancy cameras, all that stuff it's just better data collection for the data collector and your expert, and that gives us a little bit more information to go on than if we didn't have them. But you can have all that stuff and not any guidance, and you could be just about as smart about your golf game as I would be looking at an MRI trying to fix this shoulder. I would die when I started bleeding with the scalpel. I would pass out. Heart attack.
So would the recommendation then be kind of the way to use that technology is once you kind of find what works for you, identify what those numbers are, and then that basically becomes your quote unquote baseline that you're hitting it off, you're just trying to get back to it. Yeah.
Yeah, so Nick this morning is practicing with Trackman all the time, and he knows that if he cannot on the range try to hit a draw and put up a positive number, meaning that means the club edge traveling inside out, they hit a draw. You can draw it if you swing outside in. It just goes in somebody's backyard. If he's not seeing positive numbers when he's trying to get positive numbers, and he's not looking for some trick shot, a playable draw, he knows his swing's off. Even though he's a fader, his swing is on when he can just think I'm going to aim 1 yard to the right there, and just start the ball to the right, and it's a draw. And he fades it. So you would think that doesn't make any sense, but it makes sense, right? Because you need something to work against. Otherwise, the whole thing about fitting putters, toe hang versus face balance, which is garbage, by the way, there's no science to that at all. But because some straight back and straight through people putted better with heel shafted putters because it worked against their stroke, and some people who, not that many people historically have putted that good with face balance putters, but some probably had like a little arc to their stroke, and it kept them from over-arcing.
Yeah.
Right? You need to be able to balance out. The best possible thing you can have in golf is eliminate both sides of the golf course. Everybody says you need to eliminate one side of the golf course. That's not true. Because that means you've eliminated, let's say, the left side. Well, you can hit it out of bounds on the right. That's no good. No. When I would be at tour events with David Toms in his prime, and I don't think he ever hit it better than he did in 2012, I would walk around for a week with him, and he wouldn't hit one ball to the right of the center of the fairway, fading it 1 yard. He would just aim down the left, and he would hit it over there. So he eliminated the right side of the golf course. The ball was never over fading, and the ball couldn't turn left, so he could aim at the left edge of whatever, and the ball would go 1 yard or 10 to the right. And so that's what the best golfers did. They not just had a swing that had the current phrase as matchups, compatible components, but they probably had something that kept them, from getting way too one way or the other. Because in general, hookers will start hooking it more, and faders will start fading it more if they don't do some work the other way. I'm sure that's exactly like the body, right? If you just do one side of your body or one direction and you don't do the other direction, something will break. You won't like it.
Can confirm that 100% happens. But hey, Brian, I want to be respectful of your time. I can't thank you enough for coming on today. This has been just totally info-packed, which I love. Where can people? What's the best place for people to follow you, get more of your info, and stay in tune with what you're doing?
Yeah, so the website's brianmanzellagolf.com, but I'm primarily, a social media guy, mostly X, but pretty much everything I'll post to X and Instagram and Facebook, and it's at Brian Manzella, and then me and Michael Jacobs' page where there's 12 years of posts, and like people go to stuff like Facebook and they don't realize they can click like videos, right, and just see all the videos. You have to wade through all the posts of people saying, "How do I fix my slice for the millionth time?" That's called Postmodern Golf. Just give us a little request, and we'll. But at Brian Manzella on all the other ones, and you can ask me a question anytime. I'd love to help.
Perfect. We'll make sure we get that all in the show notes for you guys, so you can get access to Brian and all the great work he does. And Brian, thanks again for coming on today.
A lot of fun, Chris. You're one of the best at this. I'll just let you know. You're very good.
Appreciate that. Awesome, guys. Well, thanks so much for hanging out with me here on the Golf Fitness Bomb Squad, and we'll catch you on the next episode.